So once again, Paul Jones joins us here at Manx Radio. Now, Paul, it's been a fair few weeks, but it almost seems like it's gone in a flash, really, because FC Isle of Man have already started their pre-season preparations ahead of the 24-25 NWCFL Premier Division campaign. First pre-season fixture up against Brackley Town of the National League North as well. So first off, before we get to the match this weekend, how have the early preparations been as a team at the moment?
Really good. We've been in for, it'll be 3 weeks by the time we play against Brackley, so it feels very early, but with the season kicking off on the 27th of July, we needed to give everybody at least 6 weeks of a bit of a run-in. So yeah, we've had some really good training sessions. We're obviously, this time of year people have been away on holidays, and we've not necessarily had the full group in for every session, but got some really good work done, and the Brackley game gives us a clear focus to work towards fixtures, and they're, as you said, the National League North playoff finalists last year, so it's going to be an exceptionally tough game, but it's kind of probably just what we need to really have a bit of focus towards the first 3 weeks of our training and see where we're at to then plan the next 3 weeks before we go into the first game of the season. But, everyone's excited to be back and ready to get going.
Since we last spoke at the end of the last campaign, there has been a little bit of change with regards to the squad. So first off, Dean Pennington, after spending a couple of months at Bury toward the latter end of the last campaign, is expected to be back in the FC Isle of Man setup. So what do you make of that personally?
It's good for us that he's back. He's a game changer, Dean. I think there's elements that he brings to the club that no other player on the island at the minute has, and it's for all of us to help get the best out of Dean. And I think we began to do that last season, and we all lost our way a little bit, but he got his move to Bury, for some outstanding performances. And it's unfortunate for Dean that he's not able to maintain his football journey in England, but I know he's made the decision on his own terms, and he's really happy about being back and super excited about what we're capable of as a group. So I think his experiences in Bury will help us as a group, and he's come back ready and willing to do what it takes to fight for his place in the team first and foremost, and if he gets into the team, to make sure he delivers performances that help us get where we're trying to get to by the end of the season.
That's an ingoing. Now, an outgoing that kind of drew quite a lot of attention this summer was the fact that club captain Frank Jones confirmed on social media, effectively, that he wouldn't be part of the setup for this coming campaign. Not a decision or a situation that has pleased everyone. So just from your situation, can you explain a little bit of the reasoning behind that decision?
Look, Frank's been an exceptional role model for many footballers on the Isle of Man for 20 years now. The way he's rinsed everything out of himself and his career has been brilliant, and I've got nothing but respect for what he's done over a long period of time to stay at the levels required in order to keep putting himself in positions where he's getting selected in national teams or Ellen Vannin or with FC Isle of Man as it's come around. He scored FC Isle of Man's first goal in league football, and he's our first ever club captain, and the sacrifices he's made and the commitment he's given to local football and our football club has been brilliant. I think a lot of people wrote him off when he had his ACL injuries in that first game of first season. It took him 18 months to come back, and I'm so pleased that we could have, got him back in at the end of that second season, and that he's been able to have a full season as a player for FC Isle of Man. And it's different class, and I've got nothing but respect for what he's done. Ultimately, it's about me picking, 22, 25 players, which we are doing this season in a smaller squad that I think can take the club forward over the next few years. And in order to do that, that means that maybe some players have to move out of that group to give younger players the opportunity to develop and improve and hopefully not just match what Frank has done over the last 20 years, but go beyond that. And unfortunately, he's one of a few players that aren't coming back in this season, and it doesn't detract from all the fantastic things that they've done within football and for FC Isle of Man in the past. But we're trying to move the group forward, and the decision I've made is that I think over the next couple of years, hopefully, if I'm still in charge, that is without Frank in that group. we had a good conversation, and Frank had an opportunity to stay in the playing group in a different role, and has chosen not to take that, and that's his choice. So, we're sad to see him go, but ultimately it's about moving forward with a group that we think we can make big progress with over the next 2 or 3 seasons, and that's why I've taken the decision that I've taken.
And just on this point more generally, I guess, is you've already mentioned that you want to bring some of those younger players through to keep progressing things for the future there. But how important is it that you find the right balance, do you think, of getting those younger players that can supplement it for the future alongside those experienced figures that can help mentor them through what is an extremely difficult league?
Yeah, I agree. And, we've got a lot of players there that have played 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 games of football at this level of football. They're still around, they're in the squad, they're very experienced, and they've got a lot to bring. And, I think the group dynamic might be a little bit different, but I don't see that as a negative thing. It gives opportunities for others to step up and step forward. And we've got a really good group with some really good young players who hopefully will take that opportunity to push on. And people like Frank and Furo, who's not here, and a couple of the others that aren't involved, they got opportunities as young players by someone taking a chance on them, and that meant somebody else had to miss out for them to get their original opportunity, and this is no different. And I think we're looking at having a smaller playing group in order to give more certainty really to those players, but also local football to know who will and won't be available for them on a week-to-week basis. And we've got a younger group alongside that will be signed, that will work with us hopefully fairly regularly, that will be the next first team group in the future. In order to do that, that means there's a group of players that were with us last season that aren't with us this season. But for me and the way I'd like to work, and as I say, the way I'd like to try and make sure we have a first team group capable of playing at levels above we are at the moment over the next 3 or 4 years, it's important to bring a young group of players along with us as we do that. And from what they've done with the little bits they've been with us this pre-season, and some exceptionally talented players there. And the ethos of the club is to provide opportunities to young players to progress in the game, and we think we've structured the first team group and the training group in order to make that even more likely to happen in the future. And unfortunately that means some people have to miss out, but it certainly doesn't detract from the value they've brought to the club over the last 3 years, but also to the careers that they've had previously. And it's sad, but that's the nature of the beast.
And I suppose just finally on this particular point generally, for those that, like you said, two-pronged question really, I suppose. Can you elaborate in any way, shape or form as to who is not going to be a part of the setup that has been previously?
Not really. We're still kind of signing players in effect. We were able to sign players from the 1st of July, so we're going out to players and asking if they would like to sign for us, and ultimately it's up to them whether they do or don't want to. So I'm sure the club will confirm a first team squad in the days ahead. It's only right that happens, and then there'll be another tranche of players, so we're probably going to end up signing the same number of players if we have the last few seasons, but the makeup of that group is going to be different in terms of having a group that everybody sees as our first team squad, and then a group that people see as a group that we develop, and hopefully some might make it into that first team squad by the end of this season, but it's more likely they're first team players for the seasons ahead. So we're still in the basis of kind of making those kind of decisions and figuring those things out, but we're very confident of having a really strong group to really attack the league from the 27th of July.
And the second prong of that is, for those players who, if something becomes public in the not too distant future, who will not be part of the setup this season, if circumstances allow this sort of thing, would there be opportunities for certain players to come back in if the circumstances are right?
Yeah, I think the door's never completely shut, is it? I don't think, we're not in a privileged position of just being able to, as we've said before, to go and sign whatever players we want and roll the checkbook out and bring players in from other clubs in our league and other clubs in our as they would do in England. So we've got a limited player pool. However, having said that, it's about getting the right blend, and that's my job as manager, I think. And we've given lots of people opportunities to commit to the club, and not everybody has done that, and not everybody has made the most of their opportunity. High praise for Frank and people like him who have made the most of their opportunities they've been given, and not everybody has. So some of the players that aren't around and maybe weren't able to make the most of their opportunity last season, or weren't able to commit this season to what we've asked them to do, and the player group that we will have are the ones that we think are going to be able to really take us on towards the top end of the table this season, but are also hugely committed to what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it. And both of those things are required. There's lots of people who think they can probably play for Isle of Man, but then the reality of the commitment required and the level that they need to get to and stay at, it doesn't always marry up. And I think we've learnt those lessons over the last 3 years, and just having a lot of bodies around to know you can pick a squad, like, we need to get away from that and give people a bit more certainty about where they are, and that'll make it easier for me to manage, but it also makes sure that the squad that we do have are much more settled, and they all know their roles and they all understand how they can impact the game when they come on, and it just makes everything a little bit easier inside the club and hopefully outside of the club as well.
Well, that's in terms of who may be moving on from the setup as it stands. In terms of those coming in, we've already mentioned Dean Pennington there, but the club hosted open trials again over the summer for players aged 16 to 26. So from your perspective, is there anyone or any number of players that potentially caught the club's eye?
Yeah, very much so. That's basically where the group of players that sit outside the first team squad will have come from. Some of those players have straddled our first team group and had a little dip in and out of our first team last season. There's others that are new to the club, but very much players that we've been aware of. So some really good, promising 16-year-olds that we hope will want to work with us over the season, through to kind of 24, 25-year-olds who have put themselves forward to be looked at and have done ever so well. So that's, I think I've said to you before, to stand up in front of your community and 1,500 people or however many might be at home games this season and play and not be scared to get any stick and just go and play with no fear. You've got to be willing to put yourself out there to do that, and by turning up to those open sessions, those young people have done that in the first instance, and now we're going to work with them hopefully over a period of time to see whether they can turn into first team players in the future. And when we are, or if we are short of first team players as a squad, then there'll be that group of people that we go to fill the gaps within the squad. So really excited about working with them. They've some of them have been in and done 2 or 3 sessions with us and really have shown some fantastic qualities on the football pitch. And as I've said to them, they can't really class themselves as a FC Isle of Man player until they've played 25, 30 games of first team football for us on a consistent basis. So that's what they've got to strive towards. And some of our first team squad are aiming for the shirt, and that group are aiming to try and get into the squad to fight for the shirt. And I think we've got quite a nice mix so far this season, and it's quite exciting, really. And I've said for the longest time, as part of setting the club up, that we've got an exceptional player base on the Isle of Man that just haven't had the opportunity. I think the way we've set things up this season will provide more of an opportunity for those younger players to really progress within the game, certainly the ones that have the desire and commitment to do so. And that door is kind of fluidly open to make sure that we really are providing the best opportunity possible to the most appropriate people possible.
And coming back to something you brought up a little while before, is the idea of potentially condensing the squad a little bit to provide certainty not just to the players but the local clubs as well. Now, ever since FC Isle of Man started, this seems to be a continuous debate going on as to whether FC Isle of Man is beneficial or detrimental to the wider footballing scene. There are some that are critical.
Of course, and there always will be. Yeah.
And believe it's detriment, it's jeopardising other clubs. So how much assurance can you give, I suppose, to the other Isle of Man clubs that they won't be at a disadvantage with what FC Isle of Man does this season?
I think I can't, we're working with the best intentions that we can, and I stood up and spoke at a lot of kind of workshops when we were setting the club up, and hopefully passionately trying to say that the club is here to complement the local game and not threaten the local game. And, we've always worked with those intentions, and we've carried quite a big player squad and registered player base over the last kind of 3 seasons, and I understand it isn't always easy, especially if you're not quite sure which players will be playing in the local game and which players won't be. And we're trying this year to give a little bit more certainty and to the players and also to the local clubs. Now, the players in that first team squad will be dual registered if they wish to be. They're non-contract. They can still go and play in the local game if they want, but we're trying to make that a smaller group so people are a little bit more aware of who the people are week in and week out that we're really focusing our attention on. And there'll be another group that might come in and train with us on a Tuesday night. If they want to, they'll be offered the opportunity to, but we'll always be on a Thursday night with their local clubs, and we'll always be available unless we're calling them in to play for us with their local clubs on a Saturday. But they'll only be coming into play if there's injuries or unavailability or form or whatever else it might dictate. So we're trying our best based on feedback, based on experiences, what's worked well for us, what hasn't worked well for the local game, to try and progress how we do things to minimise our impact as much as possible. But we're never going to take that away. We'd like to, for us all in football, to think of FC Isle of Man as a net benefit to the local game and giving young players a place to play and really stretch themselves, and also hopefully make it more likely that more people are playing football on the Isle of Man, and that's all of our jobs. I've said before, it's a partnership between us and all the clubs on the Isle of Man, but we're not a national team, we're not sitting above them and dictating what happens. Ultimately, I'm pretty sure, Corinthians aren't going to go and ask Union Mill's permission about how they set their squad up. And, we're a club in the Isle of Man like everybody else. We're just trying to make our decisions to be as net positive impact as much as we possibly can. And some of the ways we're trying to do our squads this season is to do that, and also make sure that the local clubs are able to operate with a little bit more certainty and more information about which players will be available week in and week out for them. But I guess I'll always finish on, it's always the players that make the choice. The opportunity is there for them to play for FC Isle of Man. They don't have to say yes. And if they would prefer to play in the local game on a Saturday, then that's their prerogative to do so. We hold nothing over the players in that regard. And, it'll always be the players who decide whether they train with us or whether they train with the other teams on the Isle of Man, or whether they play for us or play for the other teams on the Isle of Man. And that won't change until, if ever, we get to a place where players are contracted.
Well, we've covered a lot of bigger picture stuff, I suppose, going into the next season. Well, turning our attentions then to the immediate thing this weekend, up against Brackley Town at the Bowl on Friday, brought forward 24 hours. So, of course, a team several leagues higher than you in the National League system. Played them in pre-season last season, along with the likes of Altrincham previously, who are in the National League setup. So, what kind of challenge are you expecting, and what do you want to get out of this first pre-season fixture?
A huge challenge is what I'm expecting. It's going to be tough. We're their first game of pre-season, and they've only really been in for a week, 10 days. But players at that level come back in a really good shape, and I'm sure that the manager Gavin will be really looking at them to build on what they did last season with the group. He's not made too many changes, I don't think. So, they'll be looking at starting from similar to where they left off at the end of last season to push again towards the playoff and maybe even the league title again. So it'll be ridiculously hard for us. It's at 3 divisions or 3 levels is a big difference in long league football. So from our point of view, we're going to have to respect that. It's going to be a good mileage in our legs, I think. Hopefully we can get on the ball and play a little bit and show the qualities that we have, but we also might need to accept there's going to be periods of the game where we're running and working and making sure that it's very, very difficult for Brackley to take us to get a goal scoring opportunity. So, last year when we played them, it was a tight game, but that was off the back of Brackley training on the Friday night, training on the Saturday morning, and then playing us on the Saturday night. So this time around they're going to be fresh legged coming off the plane or the boat or however they're getting here, and then double training on the Saturday. So it's a huge challenge for us, but we aspire to get somewhere close to step 3 take step 2, step 3 as a football club. So it does the players a world of good to see what that level looks like in reality. There'll be huge amounts of learning for the group as individuals and a collective, and we just need to soak all of that up. You know, whatever comes in the game, you know, we're going to treat it as a proper game, obviously, and make sure we do our best to try and win. And then whatever happens off the back of that is a fantastic learning experience to then take into the rest of pre-season, especially in terms of how we set up out of possession. But I really hope the players are able to settle and to show their qualities in possession like they did towards the back end of last season.
Thank you for having the stamina to make it to the end of the Manx Radio Sportscast. You're clearly someone who has their eye on the ball at all times. Want to hear more about the latest sporting news across the Isle of Man and much more? Then might I recommend you take the plunge and subscribe to this series or a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so that, in a flash, all of our finest moments take a winner's place on your smartphone. Thank you.